guys. I am here with Rabbi Joshua Kullock from West End Synagogue. Rabbi Joshua, thank you so much for being here. Could you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thank you for the invitation. I am Joshua Kullock, rabbi at the West End Synagogue here in Nashville, Tennessee, originally from Argentina, the real South, but moved from there some time ago, spent a few years in Israel, 7 years in Mexico, and now 7 years here. So that's, married, proud father of 3 daughters. What else do you want to know?
Well, I guess one just quick question for the guys listening: why the United States? What brought you up here?
Well, it's a good question. I would say that the congregation presented a few challenges that were very interesting for me, professionally speaking. Nashville was a lovely city. When we came, we just fell in love with the city.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is that the city, the country in general, but certainly Nashville, offered us a quality of life that, coming from Latin America, was something that we were very much eager to try for ourselves. And it worked very well. We were very, very happy. We are very happy.
That's awesome. So today we are going to talk about the value of a spiritual life. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you got started on your spiritual journey?
So when, I grew up in Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires hosts the 7th largest Jewish population in the world. There are not many Jews in the world. We are, less than 15 million. A huge number of them are living in both Israel and the United States. Mm-hmm. But then when you go down, Argentina is the 7th largest country in terms of Jewish population. So I grew up in a very strong Jewish community. I attended Jewish day school. And by the age of 13, as every Jewish teenager or preteen, I became a bar mitzvah, which is the rite of passage in which we mark the transition from childhood to adulthood, mm-hmm. of sorts. And at the time, I started learning and studying with the rabbinical student at the time in the place where I was being trained to become a bar mitzvah. And I felt a strong attachment to Jewish texts, to learning. And that path was initiated then. I was studying a Jewish day school, but the religious part became available as well. And then 2 years later, I was already working at a congregation. I was very young, but I was 15, and I was already training kids that were 12 as they were becoming bar bat mitzvahs. And so eventually what began as a deep attachment for learning was also joined by this idea, this call to serve others. And eventually one thing brought the other. And by the time I was already there, the path was pretty much waiting for me to take it. I was already walking on that path. And those are the sources that nurtured my personal journey.
Okay. So in walking this path, you talk about serving your community and whatnot. What are some of, and I see, agree or disagree, I see serving as a spiritual practice. What are some of the other spiritual practices that you picked up in that time that led you to become a rabbi?
Well, I very early on, I was 17, 18, I was already engaged with congregations, not only as a teacher, but also as a leader of services. And I was already conducting all sorts of rites of passage and being in touch with families. And so the service was being translated into learning moments, but also the engaging parts of social justice, social action type of services, in which we would be helping others, people less fortunate than ourselves, and organizing the community towards those ends. So, you know, that it was a spirituality of both learning and service, and the connection and the strengthening and the building of a community of practice that will be willing to engage in acts of loving kindness, as we were trying to make this world a slightly better place.
You talk about this world. I wonder, I think a lot of us would say that this world is a really hard place to foster a spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about doing that in your own personal life, deepening your faith in a world that tries to basically fight every instinct against it?
It's a good question. And like any other person on earth, we all struggle. I struggle with certain things. I read a lot. I try to make sense of what's going on. I find inspiration in some things, and I feel profoundly, I don't feel comfortable with some other things. I do believe that the spirituality for our days should not try to avoid the pain or to pretend that the pain is not there. It should not try to transform that pain or that suffering or that struggle into the reward that we should be striving to get, which I think that religions sometimes will try to transform those things that we don't actually like very much into the ideals, because since we cannot get away, let's try to make the best out of them and try to deal with them that way. I don't know, at this stage in my life, I think that the solution is not in the denial of that suffering, and it's not in the transformation of the suffering into the goal, but in to try to take that suffering, which we don't choose and we certainly don't necessarily want, but to see how can we integrate that as part of an understanding that this is part of life, and to build our spiritual practice by the recognition that we live in an imperfect world, that some things we have the blessing to be able to amend and to repair, and some things may be beyond our ability to change or to repair, which is a humbling experience. And I think that part of the spiritual journey should be also about the humbling moment in which we recognize that not everything is in our hands.
Mm-hmm.
That we need to learn to live with that and to cope with that. And the same applies with, I have this, I teach to my congregation all the time, this trap that many times we see in the need for fake certainties. We need certainties. We don't do very well with uncertainty. Okay, we don't like it. It's like we are not wired to live peacefully with the uncertainty that is all around us. So many times we come across all sorts of answers that to me are more on the side of the fake certainty, but people are eager to embrace those. And sometimes, politicians, religious leaders, all sorts of media personalities, you name it, will embark or embrace that type of narrative, because it shows how painful sometimes it is for us to deal with those things that we cannot control, or those things that we cannot understand. And for example, I don't know, it's with this virus going around, I have read from all religions, okay, Jews, Christians, Muslims, doesn't matter, uh, all sorts of crazy theories about the reason why God is punishing us with the virus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to me, that is one of those moments in which I say, there's no way you can prove that you are right.
Right.
There is nothing to be gained. And usually, when you actually stop for a minute to think about the reasons these people are giving for God punishing us, what you discover is not what God is doing, is what is the agenda of whoever is teaching
Mm-hmm.
that type of
Yes.
uh,
Because they come up with reasons so they can control, to
correct.
blame.
And they control, they blame, and then it's the transformation of God into their hostage, into pushing for whatever agenda they may have.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't resonate with me. And theologically speaking, I don't see God as a punishing figure. I decide to see God in the resilience of the people, in the resourcefulness of those who are on the front lines, in the courage of the physicians and the nurses. That's where I see God.
Mm-hmm.
In the relentless work of the scientists who are behind the microscopes trying to develop a vaccine. That's where I see God. It's not in the punishing side of the equation. It's in the healing part of the equation.
Right.
Okay. So those are the things that I struggle, and I try to build a spiritual practice that guides me towards a space and a time in which I can make peace with those things that I cannot control, with those things that I don't know, and with those things that may be the source of some pain and suffering that I recognize, and try to deal with that the best I can.
And I ask this, is this a particularly Jewish point of view, or is this something you see across other religions? Because I speaking for the Christian faith, I do see this some, but I see more and more talk of the victory in Jesus idea, that we are victorious, that there is going to be a day when everything is done and restored, and that to not necessarily ignore but endure rather than sit in it, and maybe even recognize the pain of others and sit with them in their pain as well.
Yeah, well, I think that there was a Jewish theologian by the name of Rabbi Joshua Herschel, who used to say that there is a layer that he called the theology, in which religions may differ. So, you speak about Jesus, I don't speak about Jesus, and the Muslims will speak about Muhammad, and we don't. But then there is a layer of what he called the deep theology, like an iceberg, that you see the tip, and the tip seems to be different. But then at the bottom, there is something that unites most of the time many of the religious narratives, and it's the call to care for the pain that is being suffered by others, and it's the call to try to be part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. So those things I think that we share, and those are the things that as we celebrate and strengthen those things that we have that make us different, which I think it's a good thing, then we also need to strengthen and to work in those things that we share. And that is the call to make this place a better place. And this idea that even if we cannot solve every problem, we still believe in the grace of God that will help us to get there. Okay, we hope that if we do the right thing, we will be helped from above in trying to make this place a better place. In the Jewish tradition, when we speak about the Messiah, traditionally there are basically two different schools. School number one says the Messiah will come with the world when the world is a mess. Okay, the second school says no, the Messiah will come when everyone does what is his or her fair share of the homework in making this world a better place. I believe in the second school. The first one is, I don't think it's logical, it's rational, it's inspiring, and it's none of those things, and it's only very dangerous. Because if you believe that the Messiah will come when this world is a mess, then you may have the crazy idea of trying to break the world until there is no other option than to send like the Messiah to fix all the, to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
I think, and the majority of the voices in the Jewish tradition will go on the other side of the conversation, and then the Messiah doesn't become the cause for the redemption. It becomes the consequence of what we were already doing, because we already understood. So redemption in that framework is the joint work that we all do by embracing our fair share of what needs to be done in making this place a better place. Why is not, why are we not there yet? Because not everyone is doing their homework. But if we could be able to, reach out and convince somehow everyone about the importance of their actions. In Judaism, it's not so much what you believe. It's way more about what you do. So, in that regard, Judaism has some sort of theological, I like to call it advantage, just because in Judaism, no one needs for the rest of the world to become Jewish. Okay, you need to be if you're a Christian, be a good Christian. If you're a Muslim, be a good Muslim. If you are the best you can be within your own world, the world will get better. Because again, in the Jewish tradition, redemption is a function of our actions. It's what we do today in the world, here and now.
I love that. So what would you say to those people who say, well, I don't believe in anything, I'm not spiritual, that doesn't make any sense to me, it doesn't rationally compute in my brain? What do you say to those types of people?
What I say is there is a short teaching in the Talmud, which is this big it's a bunch of tractates with a lot of Jewish teachings from 1500 years ago. And there is one short teaching in which God appears to be asked, what do you prefer? For people to believe in you and do nothing, or for people to stop believing in you, to forget you, but do stuff? To which God shows in that text, not that God said this, these are the rabbis thinking about these questions. But the rabbis are saying, or are presenting God as responding, I rather see them forgetting me and engaging in the performance of good deeds, because through the performance of good deeds, they may come back to me. So again, the question from the Jewish perspective, is pretty much about how can we create a theology of good deeds
Mm.
that will move the world where it needs to be.
Mm.
And then, if people believe in God or not, it's, we will deal with that later. It's to me, I don't see my role as someone who needs to inspire people to believe in God. I see my goal or my job as a rabbi as someone who, if in a good day, will be lucky enough to inspire people to engage in in the performance of some good deeds.
Mm.
Okay, in the broadest sense of the word. That is where I see that we can make a difference.
Mm.
And whether people believe or not, belief comes in many ways, shapes, or forms. And probably with someone who says, I don't believe in God, after a lengthy conversation, we may end up coming to the conclusion that probably both of us don't believe in the same type of God. So
Right.
I may probably do not believe in the same God that took that person away from God. So it's a matter of discussing what do we mean when we talk about God, which is, again, it's a big subject.
I've heard it said that there is no division between the sacred and the secular because everything we do, every decision we make is spiritual in one way, shape, or form, whether we admit it or not.
Correct. So if that is true, which may be, then the question is about the actions.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens with what people believe comes second. But again, philosophically speaking, there are different schools of thought. People who would say you would only do right if you believe right. And people would say you do right and then you come to the ideas. So it's a Greek philosophy 101 in terms of the ideas against the real world, and what comes first and what comes second. I, in this stage of my life at least, tend to believe that it is way more important to put our efforts in the development of consistent practices that will guide us to values and to virtues, instead of trying to define and decide what is the right type of belief, which we may never come to an agreement, and the world will still be the mess it is now. So if we agree upon, yes, if we all agree that it's good to be kind to the elderly, it doesn't matter what do you believe about X, Y, or Z, or what I believe about X, Y, and Z. If we both come to an agreement that being kind to the elderly is important, let's do that.
Yep.
And we can leave the theological conversations for a later time. That's where I am. Again, it's like some people may say, no, you need to believe in the right thing in order to do the right thing. I don't know. In the way I read the reality, I have known people who believe all sorts of things or nothing at all, and they can come together to do some good things. And I know people who believe all sorts of things and nothing at all, and they can also come together to do a whole lot of evil in this world as well. So that's why I bring the conversation to the spirituality of actions.
That's, yeah. It reminds me somewhat of the Chronicles of Narnia. Are you familiar with the towards at the end of the last battle when Aslan is letting people into his new kingdom and the enemy soldier comes to the gate and he lets them in and they're like, well, what are you doing? He fought against you. He wasn't on your side. And Aslan says, well, he believed in his heart, like with his whole heart, and what he was doing was right. And nobody can do that except for me, and he didn't know he was doing it for me, but he was.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's kind of similar in that we don't know, nobody knows entirely what is happening, but we are working towards a goal, and
Yes.
that the good things come from one source.
Yeah, but again, that source may have many different pathways
Yes.
leading
Yes.
to. So it's the again, we may have different understandings of that, but again, but maybe one of the nicest metaphors that I think speak fondly about religious pluralism in our days is that if you have a prism, okay, and you take a ray of light and you put it through the prism, you will get a variety of colors, the colors of the rainbow, right?
Yep.
So the question is, all those colors are the same light or not? And actually, when you think about it, it's the same light, and the only thing that has changed is that in the refraction going through the prism, you see many colors.
Yep.
Okay, and I think that if we could get to that insight and that understanding that religions may be different colors of that same primordial light, we could be better in the understanding or the embracing of the other in its otherness. So if I am blue and you are red, I won't try for your redness to become bluish and the other way around. Okay, yeah. It's like we will all celebrate the fact that there is a red and there is a blue and there is a green and there is a yellow, because all of us are coming from that same source of light. And if you think about this, like pushing the metaphor a little bit more, masterpieces in art can only happen when you know how to use every color. If you put all the colors together, you get an ugly gray. And maybe modern art is slightly different, but I don't know. But you won't find any classic masterpiece that is just a big chunk of gray.
Right.
It's in the mixture of the colors and in making those colors to be part of, again, moving the metaphor again, a wonderful symphony that we become the best version of ourselves as humanity. Not when we have a symphony made out of only pianos or only violins, or it's when we can make music together with you being a piano and me being a flute or whatever. But that takes time and takes the development of, again, if you want, the spirituality of the difference and being comfortable in our own skin, and also coming to a realization, which I understand is not easy for everyone, because our texts and our traditions sometimes are speaking, and sometimes that's not easy, but this idea that there are multiple pathways, not only one.
Yeah.
Which, again, for me, it's easy to say, but I understand that at least in some portions of other religious traditions, this might come to a conflict with texts or with core ideas that are still there.
Yeah. So I don't want to keep you too long. I want to land the plane here, but before we go, can you give us any resources that might be helpful to people in whatever place they may find themselves in pursuing a spiritual life or deepening their spirituality in any way, shape, or form?
I will go with something that is completely, it might be completely against what you are asking me to do, but that's fine. I'm countercultural, or something like that. But I don't believe in providing all the answers to the questions, but in creating more questions, because it opens up for more conversations. So I will recommend a book that I think that should be read both by people who believe and people who have a spiritual life, and people who do not believe at all and have found themselves very far away from religious institutions. Okay. Which I think it's a book that it is a thoughtful book, written by a guy who doesn't believe in anything. Right? So spoiler alert. But I think that he is capable, if you read it right, to remind us why religions are important, even for people who do not believe.
Okay.
So the book is Religions for Atheists. And it was written by a Swiss-British philosopher by the name of Alain de Botton.
Okay.
Religion for Atheists. And I think it is an endearing, thoughtful, and thought-provoking book that may not offer all of the answers, but may create a wonderful ground for fulfilling questions.
I love it.
And again, I think that he reminds us, religious folks, why religion is so important and moving, even if he doesn't believe in any of that, and even if he's talking to the non-religious folks. But religions historically have found many ways in creating meaning, and some of those ways are still very important in our days. And so by engaging in ritual, or by engaging in the reading of specific books or the scripture, or by engaging in looking at art, or listening to music, we have found throughout our history different ways to connect with something that is beyond this material world. And I think that, again, the writer will go somewhere else, but I think that it's a wonderful reading, and should be appreciated, I hope, as someone who, instead of trashing religions, we know many of the atheists that are very, very fond of trashing religions for the sake of trashing religions. I find in the words of this philosopher some interesting insights into what can bring some tools for the development of our own spirituality. So he won't come to tell us how spirituality is important or how God is important, because it's not where he is, but we know that. I guess that most people listening to this or watching this believe in something, so they don't need the philosopher to tell them to believe or not. But the philosopher may point to some of those aspects of religion that can become a source of strength in these uncertain times.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Rabbi Joshua, for your time today. I am just so thankful that you were able to meet with us, and thank you so much.
Well, anytime. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for everyone who is watching or listening. And again, if you don't like the book or anything that I have said, that's fine. Nothing personal. It's the good thing.
You don't want them to @ you at Twitter?
They can do it, but my Twitter account is in Spanish, so if they want to practice their Spanish, that's no problem. But again, it's in this time of physical distance, what I keep telling my congregation, and I think it applies to everyone, regardless of gender, religion, or whatever else. in times of physical distancing, we need to find ways to be spiritually closer than ever.
Yep.
And even if we agree to disagree, I think that the point of closeness or friendships is not in the amount of things that we can agree upon, but it's also about the possibility to spend some time thinking together about those things that are important to us.
Yeah. You say hi?
Hi.
That's
Hi.
Rabbi Joshua. Can you say hi, Rabbi Joshua?
I'm Joshua.
How are you?
This is Sellers. This is my son.
Nice meeting you.
Hey, go out and play, okay? Well, I
Nice.
need to go help this little guy, I guess. So,
Good, that's good. Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much.
Anytime.
Yep.